Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Big 1-0, episode 10. I can't believe it's already been, 10 weeks. I was shocked last week,
I know.
And now here we are on episode 10.
Yeah.
So, with that being said, I want to say a few quick things. First of all, thank you to all of our consistent viewers for sticking with us this long. We're happy you're getting something out of this. I know these kind of conversations to some people can be very, not hard, but when you have a different perspective on life, like a lot of people don't really see things the way I do.
That's true.
And, I don't mean to make myself sound like the Holy Grail or anything like that, but, we've had feedback from people who have listened to our conversations and have really gotten a whole new view on things.
Yeah, it's good. It's good.
Or even people who have had the same views and they're like shocked that somebody else sees it that way.
Thinks like them. Yeah.
Exactly. And so we thank you for, sticking with us up to this long. It's great to have you guys and getting something out of this. And of course, to all the new viewers, we're very happy to have you here as well. And if this is your first time watching, we hope you enjoy your viewing here, and hope you get something out of it. I do want to say too, this episode is a bit different because I actually had a little bit of a role in deciding
He did.
the point. This is actually kind of an offhand from a viewer.
Yep.
And I don't know her notes.
Nope.
I don't know anything about what she came up with. I just
Gave me kind of a direction.
I pointed you in the direction and you went down that way.
I did.
So all of this it's the same as every other time. I'm completely in the dark.
Yep.
Other than the topic. But let's get right into it. Take it away.
Yeah. And with what Brian was saying, for those of you that have stuck with us, we really appreciate it because I think like what Brian was saying, a lot of times people feel very alone. And when they go through things in life, they think, one, that no one else has been where they are or going through what they're going through. But I think through this, people find that, wow, we're not so different. We all may have different perspectives. Yeah. We all may look at our situations different. We may even have to handle our situations differently. But I think it's nice to have these kind of conversations because even though they can be really hard topics, the thing is life is hard. Life is hard. And it's good because, and I don't mean to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
But like, I think what people are finding is even if they don't find the answer to their problem, I think just knowing that someone else is there or has been there, right? It's always the support that really helps. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and not only that, but when you're going through a lot in your life and like some of the things that we've said that people have agreed with, it kind of goes with what I said of like people realizing like, oh, I'm not the only one who thinks that way.
Right.
It kind of helps you realize that, I'm not as alone as I thought I was. So it's always encouraging seeing people that reach out to us and tell us kind of like, thank you for putting that out.
Yeah.
Because even just one small thing can really help change a person's perspective on life, help them readjust. It's like a breath of fresh air.
It is. And it's like when you and I talk, right? I always say to you that you and I hardly ever think alike. And when we talk, one thing I like about the fact that we don't think alike is that we can look at it from different angles. And then maybe it might spark something in you to be like, okay, maybe I should do this a little differently. It's always about also the encouragement too, right?
Right.
Yeah. So I'm glad people are getting something out of it. You may not always get something out of every podcast, and that's okay. Maybe if you can walk away with a little something.
Right.
That's what really matters. So again, we're going to start with our disclaimers. And again, thank you everyone for being with us and our new viewers. So again, we're not doctors, psychologists, or counselors. We're not giving any medical or psychological advice. We're just simply here to discuss real life situations, to give hope, encouragement, and instill change. And some of these topics might get a little bit more difficult. And it's okay, because it's life, right? And sometimes life sucks. And those subjects that people maybe sometimes don't want to talk about, or maybe they're not ready to talk about, eventually need to be talked about.
Communication is important.
It's very important.
Even if it's just listening, you know, putting your opinions out there sometimes can put yourself in a dangerous position, but other times it's important to let your feelings out.
It is. It is.
It really is.
Well, eventually they're going to anyway.
Yeah, but how they come out.
Okay,
You know,
I'll give
how
you that.
how they come out is the thing that I think a lot of people don't realize.
Yeah.
How it affects others. Like, you can always have somebody right next to you that has differing opinions on things, but if you come to it from a place of like, I understand your perspective, but here's mine. It's like a humbling experience.
It is.
You know, you're not just jamming your opinion down someone's throat. You're actually absorbing what they say.
Yeah, because on that too, Brian, is the fact that you don't have to agree. Like, we can agree to disagree.
Yeah, and that's okay.
Because nobody has all the answers. It's just about maybe even just being there. Yeah.
Well, like I said, communication is important no matter what.
Right.
No matter what, whether it's, you know, just normal everyday conversation, relationship, communication is important.
Yeah, no matter what it is.
Because hiding your feelings or, you know, hiding your emotions, hiding your thoughts, even hiding yourself,
Right.
your personality, all of it can boil to the surface and come out in a way you didn't want it to.
Yes.
And that can cause more damage than
it could have. If you'd have avoided it. Well, you know, it's like Papa always said to me. He said, Penny, don't worry. You know, because I would talk to him about, you know, other people and other situations and asking him how I should handle it. And he'd always say, don't worry, eventually people are going to show their true colors. And they do.
Yeah.
And they do.
Yep. Exactly.
Good, bad, or ugly, right? Yep. So in our last episode, we discussed understanding your self-worth versus recognizing your potential. And again, especially for you new viewers, we always bring the last topic that we talked about with our podcast into the next one, because I'm trying to keep a flow here so that we build upon and build upon and build upon. So if you didn't watch the last podcast, or maybe you haven't watched any of them, of course, you can always go back and watch those. So we talked about how they are connected, understanding your self-worth and recognizing your potential, and that people don't always understand your self-worth, but they may see your potential. Your potential may be something that people can obviously see, but self-worth is something I believe that it's defined much deeper and much harder to find, especially in others. You might be able to find yours. Maybe you have found your niche in life. Is that right, Brian? And that helps you to find your self-worth. But for other people, finding your self-worth or knowing what you're worth, that's a little harder, because we don't, how can I say it? I don't think we sometimes take the time to maybe understand or know people the way they really are. You say you know somebody, but do you really?
There are people that have known each other for years that have never seen the true side of themselves. I always say, and I think I said this in either last week's episode or the week before, you always see a person's true colors when times are bad.
Yes.
I don't think it was last week, but, you know, my point still stands.
It wasn't a podcast, yeah.
It wasn't an episode. Because it's always easy to be nice or be in your happy mask when everything is going well. But once the boulders start coming down, that's when you see the person next to you is more than willing to leave you behind.
Oh yeah, give it time. Give it time.
And it's unfortunate because, you know, a lot of times people don't realize that they can accomplish so much more, not just as a group, but as an individual, if they lay aside their pride for a few minutes.
We talked about that earlier today, didn't we, Brian?
Pride is a big part of human nature, you know?
And it's dangerous.
It's incredibly dangerous.
It's incredibly dangerous.
It can destroy groups, families, everything. And you don't realize it, but even in selfless acts, there can be pride in that too.
Yep.
You know? Or I should say selfishness.
Yeah, more selfishness, absolutely.
So you really have to examine yourself before you make a move on something and wonder, why am I doing this?
That's good. Yeah.
You know?
Is it for you selfishly, or are you self-sacrificing?
Sacrificing is the thing that you need to look for. Or is the person sacrificing their own wants and needs and desires for me? Or are they just doing this because it makes them feel good that I feel good?
Right. Right.
And I'm not saying that's always a bad thing.
Right. No, sometimes
people can give in a happy way, but if you're giving just because it makes you feel good and you don't really care if the person wants you to or not, because I've seen people do that. You know, people are like, I'm going to give you something, and the other person's like, no, I don't want you to. I don't need it. And they're like, no, I'm going to do it anyway.
Right.
It's like, okay, well, why are you doing that?
Well, isn't it always about intention?
Intention's a big part of it.
So it's...
Like in my case, a lot of my friends would probably look at me when I give them things and be like, well, why are you doing that? Well, what they don't realize is that I'm sacrificing a bit of my freedom, you know, or I shouldn't say freedom, but like my spending, for example, to make sure that they're like, make sure they're happy. So like, for example, one of my friends was getting her nails done, but she doesn't have a job. And that was going to cost her $80. Now I could have easily said, oh, sorry to hear that, but I sacrificed $100.
Wow, Brian.
100, not 80. I didn't give her what she needed. I gave her above and beyond and sacrificed a little bit of pay on a bill I could have spent. Now, it didn't put me behind because I planned ahead. I always plan ahead when it comes to finances, but, you know, I sacrificed a little bit of that paycheck to make sure that she could have fun with her mother.
Right, right. Yeah, and sometimes that's okay to do that. I think it's the intention behind it. Or did you do it to be selfish so that it gave you the glory, so to speak, or did you do it out of true sacrifice for a friend?
I never expect anything. I never expect anything in return. I didn't do that because I wanted anything from it. You know, even if she didn't thank me for it, as long as she had got to have fun with her mother, that's all I cared about.
Yeah, that's nice. Very nice. So it is important that others understand your self-worth and recognize your potential. The problem is that they don't always, and we've talked about that. So another thing we talked about is, how do you live if they don't? Because people can be very judgmental in their expectations of you. And I'll add a little bit to that because we didn't talk about it last week, is that we did say that to remember that your best is always good enough. Here's the thing: you have to be careful when people expect the best from you. Sometimes there are people out there that even when you've done your best, it's never enough and it's never good enough. So you have to be careful with that too, because there's just some people out there that you're doing your best, but their expectations of you, you'll never meet them.
Or you'll get those people that, you know, tell you to do your best, and when you do, they always want more.
Exactly, that's what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah, they
It's
don't.
never enough.
It's not even that it's never enough. When I say that it is enough, where they're appreciative of what you do, but they keep coming back for more because they know, number one, you're probably not going to say no, or number two, they're just going to keep taking advantage of you. You know, some employers do that.
Yep.
You know, you have the yes man. You know,
Yes.
no matter what you do, they come to you and be like, hey, can you do this? Yeah. Okay. Can you go do that? Yeah. And before you know it, you're tackling things in that job that aren't even your responsibility.
Right. And you're drained.
No, it can.
Oh,
It may not hit you right away, but
No, it'll suck
eventually,
you dry eventually.
it will. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's the same thing with, you know, everyday life.
Yep.
like you just said, people who expect more and more and more,
Yep. Take.
and that it's never enough. It's not that it's never enough, it's that it's too much. They just keep absorbing.
Do you think they know that they're doing that? Do you think people know that they're doing that when they...
Yeah.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's ignorant.
It's pride. They want... It's selfishness.
At whose
it's greed.
expense?
Well, not theirs, because they're getting everything they want.
So whose fault is it? Is it the person that keeps wanting more and asking for more, or is it the person that never knows how to say no?
That one.
The second one?
The person who never knows how to say no. I know that's a very, extreme point of view, but I've seen it where people know they're being taken advantage of.
Really?
But they're just too afraid to say no. Because they would much rather take the blame of themselves. They'd rather sit there, and they wouldn't care as much about what the other person... They care more about how they think of themselves. It is selfishness on both sides. Because then that person that never says no is going to sit there and be like, what kind of a friend am I if I don't do this? Or what kind of an employee am I if I don't do that? And then before you know it, it's a self-reflection.
It's true.
Yeah.
I never thought of it.
So for people who can't say no, or the person who says yes to everything, stop it.
It's okay to say no.
It is.
It is
because
okay.
It's not a matter of you being mean.
Yeah.
It's okay to say yes the first few times,
Right.
helping out. But once you start noticing a pattern of that person constantly coming to you and constantly putting more responsibilities on you, I've had jobs like that, because I used to be like that.
Yeah.
And I'll still say yes to a lot of jobs, but once it starts getting out of my pay grade, I'll go off the beaten path with this story, but there was a car we had. I'm a detailer. I don't know if I've ever mentioned that, but
You haven't.
there was a car that we had sold that I had to clean. It had stained seats.
Okay.
And I guess you could say there's a difference between a detailer and a reconditioner, and I'm not going to go into extreme detail, but a detailer just does the fine details. I basically keep a clean car clean. And this car had stains on its seats. Well, there was a person who works with us who wanted me to try to get those stains out.
Okay.
I don't have the chemicals to do that. And I thought to myself, I know this person. If I say yes to them, they're going to keep coming back with dirtier and dirtier vehicles and telling me, make it look good. I'm not a reconditioner. It takes a long time to get stains out of seats with the wrong equipment.
Right.
So I eventually started saying no. And you know what this person did? They didn't get mad at me, but you could definitely tell that they were inconvenienced by it. And the whole you want to know the reason they came to me with that stain problem to begin with? Is because one time I went above and beyond for somebody.
See? They seen that.
And you can reflect that story with
Anything.
relationships, families. If you go out of your way for one person, you can see if another person in your family or your friend group will see that and be like, well, if they can do it for me, I'm going to push a little further and see if I can get more out of that person because they're a nice person.
So isn't that...
It's like taking advantage.
Thank you. That's exactly what I was going to say. That's taking advantage.
And they are perfectly aware of what they're doing.
And okay with it.
Because it's all about them.
Wow. Ouch.
Wow,
that's
why I always say it's always good to defend yourself first.
You have to take care of yourself because no one else is going to, and we've talked about that several times. And with what Brian is saying with his job, I used to teach hairdressing. And one of the things I would always teach my students was that you have to learn how to say no. because eventually everybody from here to eternity at every time of day or night is going to want you to cut their hair. And you say, well, that's a good thing. No, it's not. Because sometimes for you, it will be an inconvenience. And if you say yes all the time, then it becomes an expectation. And that's when it's a problem.
Then you'll get that person that'll come to you for the 10th time, and you'll say no to them, and they'll be
they
like...
will lose their mind.
Yeah, and they'll be like, well, you've never done that before.
Well, here I'm doing it today, sweet cheeks. And why did that happen? Because eventually you hit that wall.
Yep.
And that happened to me one time when I owned my own salon. This was before I learned to say no, because I just was so drained at this point. And this one lady had come in. She wanted her hair done. I was getting ready to close for the day. And I said no. And she said, and she lost it. And she kept begging me. She's like, you never do. I'm like, stop. Just stop. Today for you, it's not happening, not here and not now. If you need your hair done, you're going to have to find somebody else today to do it, because I'm not. And do you know what? Two things could have happened. I could have lost a customer, and she could have never come back. Or she could have lived with it and realized that that's how it was going to be and continue to be a customer. You want to know what she did?
Bet you never saw her again.
No, she continued to come back.
Really?
She did.
Really? Usually when I see people with that kind of like, I don't want to use the word self-entitled, but like, the people that constantly get what they want,
No,
usually they double down.
Yep.
That's shocking.
She kept coming back. She was loyal till the day I sold that business.
Okay, well, I got to give her props for, not necessarily owning up, but,
Yep.
realizing that you were all she had.
Yeah, she kept coming back, and we had a great relationship. It was fine, but I had to realize I had realized. I finally hit that wall, and that's how I found out. But when I finally said enough was enough, and I was going to start setting boundaries and saying no when I needed to, because it was for my self-well-being that I had to, I found that people can sometimes, yes, it can be the bad alternate route, but sometimes it will turn out okay. But they'll realize that if you stand your ground, it'll be okay. And it was. So it can turn out good or bad. That situation just ended up turning out to be good.
It's very rare, though.
Yeah. But I was willing to take the risk because I had to.
Well, the reason I jumped to the conclusion, and I don't mean to keep putting off the episode, but the reason that I said that is because I've had similar things happen to me with my friend group. Mm-hmm. They always come to me for things. Mm-hmm. And there are times I say no. I don't have to give them a reason.
Right, you don't.
Some people expect a reason, but I don't give them a reason. They say, sorry, I can't. And I've lost friends for that. Just because I can't hang out with them for a day, or I can't go out of my way for them that particular time, or whatever the case may be. And I've lost people like that. So that's what I'm saying. It takes a lot of, I guess, realization in the case of your customer there to, realize that, if I don't do this anymore, I'm not going to have a nice hairdresser. Wow. A lot of people would view themselves in the right. And even if they did stay, I was expecting you to be like, and she made my life heck,
No, she didn't. No, it was okay. Still okay.
Nice.
Yeah, it can be a rare situation, but and when you say, Brian, that you've lost friends over it, really at the end of the day, whose loss is it?
Well, I could even say, that, but I can also say, were they ever my friend to begin with?
Oh. Wow, I never thought of it like that.
That's what I mean when I say, it's the hard times that can define a person, define their loyalty, define their
That's
friendship.
true, because if they could walk away with something that simple because you said no, whether you gave them a reason or not, whether you felt you needed to give them a reason or not, If they can just walk away, were they really your friends anyway?
That's why I never cared. As cold as that sounds, it's like, you want to walk away from me? Okay. Bye. Have fun.
Yeah.
And because I have eyes and ears in basically every server I'm in, I find out that these people lost more walking away, because then people saw their true colors. People, you don't realize who's watching. Mm-hmm. I had people get mad at me for things, but people saw what happened or know me personally and be like, he wouldn't do that.
Right.
So then the people around them would be like, why would you do that? And they had no reason, and then they would lose friends.
Right.
So it's funny how it works.
Yeah.
But it always comes back around.
Doesn't it? Karma. That's why you got to be really careful, right? With your decisions.
Oh, absolutely.
Yep. So, well, we've talked about that. And then today's episode. In today's episode, we're going to discuss, and like Brian said, I talked to him earlier this week and I said, just give me a topic that you want to talk about. And I said, I'll go off of it. And we may not talk about it exactly right now, but it'll give me something to build upon. So he'll know what I'm talking about, because it kind of goes with what the topic you gave me. Not exactly. We will get to that eventually, but I want to build a foundation, and that's where I'm going with this. So in today's episode, we're going to discuss, it's called, How Am I Defined? Okay. So I'm going to ask you, Brian, what does it mean being defined? What does that mean to you?
When you say how are you defined, if I know you can probably take that several different ways.
Yes.
But to put it simply, in my perspective, when you say how are you defined, I see it as how are you as a person?
Okay. How
are you from an outsider's perspective?
Okay. Perfect. Go with it.
Yeah. You gotta, it's like filling in the gaps of who you are that people don't see.
I like that.
Because people can know you, but do they know you?
Can they ever know you? Know you? Know you?
I think that can be a two-way street. How much I want to open up to them and how much they want to open themselves up to me.
Okay.
It's like reading a book. You can sit there and look at the cover and get the idea.
Yep.
Like this is a fantasy book. But you don't know what page 1 says. But the more you read the book,
that's good,
the more definition you get.
Yep.
That's the more really story you get. The more world you get. And it works the same with a human, with an individual.
Right. So do you think you have to feel safe by giving yourself away like that? Letting people know who you are?
Have to be safe? I would use the exact opposite. You have to be risky.
Really?
Opening yourself up to somebody who appears to want to know you, you're taking a risk in that.
Okay.
You see where I'm going?
Yeah, I didn't think of it like that.
But yeah, it can be a place of, and it really depends on the person. Like, and I'm not even talking about me. Like, if you were to, if we didn't know each other, right? Okay. And I just saw your base personality.
Yeah.
If I wanted to define myself to you by opening myself up to getting you to know me, I'm taking a risk.
True.
Because I don't know you. You don't know me. So it would take you opening yourself up to me for me to be like, okay, I can define myself to you because you've opened up to me first. I'm not going to put myself in a position where I've opened myself up to you, and then you might start taking advantage of my weaknesses.
So is your guard always up?
Protection, yeah.
Really?
And that goes into things that have happened to me in my past.
Okay. And I would say that that's probably true for most, right?
Mm-hmm. And it's not a trauma thing. It's not like I sit there and be like, oh God, I can't open myself up to anybody anymore. I want to see definition of the person first. How much you think you can trust me. And then depending on your level of definition of yourself, if I want to see you want to open up, but you're not, then I will open up to you as a sign of good faith.
Okay.
And that's what I mean. It takes two.
It does.
It's just like a relationship. It takes two. Mm-hmm. It takes both parties. Mm-hmm. So in a one-on-one scenario, I'm going to observe before I define.
That's good. Well, there's nothing wrong with that, right? Because in some ways, that's protecting yourself too, isn't it? And I think that's smart. Mm-hmm. You have to.
Yep.
Because
you can't just open yourself up to anybody.
No, because the sad reality is people do take advantage. So you can't always do that.
Yep.
So with me asking you, what does being defined mean? And you explain that very well. I believe that some of the being defined, and that can look in many different ways. I think some of that is made through choices. So we all make choices, right?
Oh, yeah.
Every day. Those choices can come in many different forms. Sometimes we actually have a choice, but sometimes those choices are made by others and because of others. Right? Mm-hmm. And those things define us. So what do you do with that? I mean,
I guess it depends on how much the other person would be influenced. Like if a person are you manipulating me to be something I'm not? Are you trying to make me open up and redefine myself? To go against what I've always done? To maybe treat you differently than I did somebody else? Redefining myself to all of those people that I've helped? Because then at that point, I'm putting on a mask. I'm hiding who I really am for somebody else, so now nobody knows who I am.
Oh, wow.
And that can be very dangerous because people can watch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's why you judge according to actions, not by who they are as a person. I don't think any less of anybody around me, but I can see a person's character based on how they treat others versus how they treat me.
Oh, wow.
And if I see a change, then someone's a liar. Just calling it how it is.
Right.
You are a liar.
Wow.
So by that logic, you have no definition. You are a blank slate. And essentially, you are being manipulated by those around you because if you treat one person differently and treat another person differently, it could be for a multitude of reasons, of course, but how they treat you is how a person is defined.
It's defined.
That's why I can tell who I can and can't trust based on how this person treats this person and how they treat me. Because it's all about self-preservation at that point. Because as cruel as this is going to sound, but I don't care about the person in front of me more than I do myself.
Okay.
And that's not from a place of selfishness. I would lay my life down for my friends. Mm-hmm. But if you would try to treat me in a way where I would redefine myself to go against the grain that I've worked on my entire life, at that point, whose fault is that? Is that my fault or is that their fault?
Well, isn't that manipulation?
I would say it's my fault. I'm allowing them to manipulate me. Mm-hmm. I'm allowing them to redefine me. Mm-hmm. I'm not taking accountability. I'm not taking responsibility. I'm going against everything that I've stood for.
I see what you mean. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So I would say it's my fault.
Is it okay to treat others differently?
Context is important.
Other people differently.
When I say treat people differently, I'm not talking about like I have to be more specific with this person when I'm talking about things versus how I'm talking to this person. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about core values. Respect,
I see.
love, and care. Like if I'm colder to you than I am to somebody else, why? Why would I need to act like that? Mm-hmm. Mm. Because either I'm not who I say I am, or there's some heavy favoritism going on.
You see that a lot. So do we all wear a mask?
To some degree.
Is that okay?
I think it depends on the situation.
Okay. So is it called for?
More no than yes. I would say it's more harmful to put on a mask around people. Be yourself. Why do I need to hide who I am or change how I am?
Because not everybody can handle who you are.
And whose problem is that?
See, and I'm going to use you as an example. Because you're a lot like me. My circle's small and tight.
Same.
Some of that is my doing, because that's how I like it. But some of it is because it's had to be that way. So is that okay?
Well, let me ask you what led to the position of you keeping your circle tight? Small friend groups.
Well, I think there's two things. Trust is one thing. I always say to people, I'll trust you until I can't. But I think the other reason is because I try to not be that person who wears the mask. And when I say that, I'll put this with it. Not because I'm perfect, because I'm not. But a lot of people, this is how I find people define me. They either really like me or they really hate me. And it's usually because I tend to speak my mind.
Yeah. And that's the same for me.
I put it out there. And I expect you to be accountable for your actions because I do the same for myself. And a lot of people can't handle that.
Yeah,
so is that where the mask wearing comes on? When you have
from
to be
you or from the people
from others,
around you?
because people can't deal.
It's a very interesting case. I would say it's probably more so not really a mask from their perspective, because like you said, people either like you or they hate you. It's the same for me. It's the people who stay with you but only speak to you or come to you when it's convenient. Or the fakeness of interaction. Because I've had that happen where somebody will come to me and I thought they were a good friend, but then, a week or two later I hear from somebody else, oh, well, that's not what that person did with me when they were talking about you or whatever. And it's like, oh, there's the mask. And then I confront that person and they either go into pure denial or they don't want anything to do with me afterwards. Exactly. They run.
Yeah.
Because they've been called on the carpet.
Why does that person have to wear a mask at all? Why? I would prefer you to just be real with me.
People can't do that.
Yeah, no, but you're going to get found out sooner or later.
Face it. They don't think ahead like that. Because in that moment, the whole reason the mask is there to begin with is because it's their own self-preservation. They only care about themselves. They don't care about how you feel. As long as what's ever happening benefits them, that's all they care about.
Is it a safety issue for them?
It could have came from a place of safety. Maybe they were in a position where they were taken advantage of and they don't want that to happen again. But they're going about it all wrong.
Exactly. That's where I'm trying to get you to go.
Yeah. But the problem is people who have been in those kind of positions who need the love and support that they want so badly go about it all wrong.
Yes.
And then they end up redefining themselves to try and make you get a fake picture of who they are.
Right.
This is why people who like struggle with addiction oftentimes will struggle with it alone, because that's all they've ever done is dealt with it by themselves, because they're tired of the constant judgment.
There it is.
Instead of actually getting the help they need. And you know, you can point out any kind of addiction.
Right.
You know, drinking, you know,
Whatever.
Smoking, whatever. Mm-hmm. The people don't need to hear, you know, that's bad for you, right?
Yeah. People are aware.
Yeah. Nobody grabs a cigarette and is like, oh, I know this is healthy.
Right. But who are we to judge why they're doing what they're doing? We're not.
Well, it's like, what led them to that?
Well, that's the whole
What
point.
brought them there?
Right. Why don't people look at that? Instead of being judgy, why don't you just maybe stay out of it altogether? But the thing is maybe even just look at the person and wonder, like you said, Brian, what got them there?
Because judgment and hatred is easy. Cold reality. Judgment and hatred is easy.
Well, look in the mirror.
And you want to know what it does? The core feature of those two emotions is it makes the other person feel better about themselves.
I was just going to say, and I did say it. Look in the mirror.
Mm-hmm. It's like I've pointed out in other episodes. None of us put our pants on any differently than anybody else.
Right.
Unless you do a triple backflip out of bed. And
I want to see that.
and then just slide right into your pants when you hit the ground. But
yeah,
you get my point.
I do.
Is that you can replace anything with anything. Any kind of problem, any kind of addiction. It still doesn't take away from you as an individual. But a lot of times people have to put on a mask when they walk out their door and paint themselves as something they're not, redefining the book of you because somebody else can't handle what the pages contain.
Oh.
And it's unfortunate.
It's very sad.
This is why I'm so upfront. You know, I am not afraid to tell somebody who looks me right in the face and say they don't like me. I have no issue telling them, well, you don't have to be around me.
It's true.
You know?
Yeah.
But a lot of people can't handle that.
They don't like people not being fake. Is it because they haven't faced their own demons?
I think a lot of people are afraid to. I think people find it a lot easier to deal with another person's demons than they do their own.
Pride?
I would say fear. More so than pride. Pride comes from the place of not wanting to change. Fear comes from the place of I'm too cowardly to change myself. It's like that person who knows they're wrong, but they won't do anything about it because they're cowards who would rather hide behind their little mask and think, I know I have issues, but I'm not as bad as you. And they're more than willing to point that out. Right. It's why I like to notice a lot of insecure people will point out other people's insecurities. It works that same way.
Right.
Cowards always talk the loudest.
It's true.
You want to know who in a room is insecure?
The talker.
Watch people. You'll start to find out when you really observe a person's attitude when they're in a group versus when they're alone. You'll start to point out little tiny thing. I'm not saying it's like a black and white thing. Like you walk in, oh, that guy's acting out. He's insecure. No. You really have to know what to look for. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying like this from a psychology perspective. I mean, it's a little bit involved, but like, you know, the people who are always willing to gossip about people are the ones that really struggle with themselves. Mm. I mean, it's why a lot of people who are really insecure were bullies.
That's true.
You know?
Yeah.
Because from somebody like me, you know, I would say I'm pretty capable of handling myself.
You are.
I'm not afraid of anybody, really. Mm-hmm. But do you see me going around and bashing people over the head?
No.
No, like I said, I would lay my life down for my friends. But then you see these other people who think they're all that in a bag of chips. But when you start peeling away the features of them, you start to realize they're not as strong as they thought they were. There's not a lot of humility.
So there's something underlying there too then.
Yep. And that's why a lot of times when I encounter somebody who is a bully, I confront them, but I don't confront them with pure aggression up front.
Mm-hmm. Smart.
I'll pull them aside and be like, why are you acting like this? Stern, you know? And then once they start giving me excuses, that's when I start kind of calming down and becoming more humble. Like, no, what's wrong?
Right. It's your approach.
Yeah. You know, and then that person will open up.
Mm-hmm.
And then the real person comes out.
And that's good.
And then you can start the healing.
Yeah, and that's why I said that's good, because that's what's needed to happen. That's the whole point.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. That's how we heal, right?
Mm-hmm.
So no matter what or how those choices are made, whether they're made by you or someone else, meaning that maybe you didn't have a choice in that matter, do you believe that those choices are what define you? Let me give you an example. So maybe take a relationship. Mm-hmm. Maybe you didn't want it to fall apart, but your partner did. And you had to make some really hard choices in that situation. Do you think the things that you do with those choices define who you really are?
Yeah.
You think you're...
I think if you're not willing to compromise, like in the example you just gave,
Mm-hmm.
if you have a partner who tells you how they feel, says what's wrong, or what things need to change, and you're not willing to, that is how they are. And that's when you need to walk away. Because that person will not change if they don't think there's anything wrong. Because they think that everything's okay. They live in their own bubble, essentially. They live in their own little reality.
Mm-hmm.
And before you know it, they're left with nothing.
So what about the poor person that didn't want it, but had to walk away because they were left with no choices? Are they defined by that?
They're going to walk away and find something better. The one who has the courage to walk away is the one who always wins in the end.
Really?
It's the one who never comes out of that rut, who stays the way that they are. They're going to be the ones that are going to be left alone.
Wow.
Now, I'm not saying all the time. I want to make that clear to any new viewers or just the viewers in general. I generalize a lot.
Mm-hmm.
There are outliers in this. There are the out in left field scenarios where, because I'm not against people changing. Because I know I've said in prior episodes, people don't change. I mean that generally.
Okay.
I know people can change, but it takes sacrifice for change. You have to be brought to a point to change.
There it is.
You have to be brought to rock bottom. People don't just wake up one day and be like, wow, I need to change. You know, when a person is dealing with themselves as an individual. Sacrifices always have to be made for change. Mm-hmm. Always.
Yep.
Whether it's finances,
yep,
wellness, relationships, you will always have to sacrifice a part of yourself.
You have to
change. Mm-hmm. Because without sacrifice, what are you changing?
Nothing.
Exactly.
You're living.
There was no sacrifice made.
Right.
You're essentially putting yourself aside for the greater good.
Right.
But if you're not willing to change, or I should say not willing to sacrifice,
mm-hmm.
then
you're just living in a bubble.
You're going through the motions of life.
So you're just existing.
Essentially, yeah.
Yeah.
You're just existing. And it may be fine for a while.
It's going to catch up to you.
It always does.
Yeah.
Whether it takes 2 years, 5 years, or 50 years, or or for when you're finally at the end, one of those days you're going to look back and be like, wow, I missed it. That's why it's really important with this podcast in particular, where I really want to express the reality of things in a more aggressive manner, because I want people to realize that life is not just black and white.
Right.
There is a good and a bad, yes, but there's multiple routes down both ways you can take that can benefit you, because what you would consider being mean
Right.
can actually be a benefit to you in the long run.
Right.
Depending on who you speak to, or depending on the people you're around.
Right.
And vice versa.
Right.
You can be nice to mean people, and it can get you down a whole different route of being like, this is
not good.
This isn't good, or this is better for me.
Right.
Because I've said this before, you're the most important person in your own life. So don't make sacrifices for people who aren't willing to make sacrifices for you.
So is that what you mean, Brian, when you say the person that had to walk away? Even though that isn't what they wanted, they'll be better off in the end?
As long as that person made the effort. Because that's how we've said this before, is, you do your best. Your best is good enough. That's it. Just do your best. If you have achieved the best you can do, don't go above and beyond that. Because at that point, the other person is going to do one of two things. Either they're just going to keep rolling with the punches that you give them, or they're going to start taking advantage of you. There is no middle road.
And it's okay for the person that decided to leave because they had to.
Yeah. And it is unfortunate. I'm not going to sit here and be like, this is the best thing, walk away hopping and skipping.
Right.
I'm just saying you'll be happier in the long run. Because if you did all you could, then what other options did you have? Like, legit, what other options did you have?
Maybe you didn't have any other options. But
well, even if you did, you can sit here and think about hundreds of different things you could have done. But if your best wasn't good enough, then what would be?
I don't know.
Exactly. Nobody knows. But the other person, like I said, is going to take advantage of that some way, because it's not about you, it's about them. And see, I'm the exact opposite. If somebody came to me with a problem, I'm going to lay myself down and be like, if this is how you feel, then I will do my best to change for you, as long as you hold me accountable to my actions. Accountability. Because nobody's perfect. I've said this before, We're all human. We all make mistakes. But if you have that person of accountability, whether it's your partner or your boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, as long as you have that level of accountability, you're doing it again. Darn it, let me see if I can get myself straight again. I apologize and take responsibility for my actions. Let's move on. Let's keep moving together.
Right.
Moving ahead together. Because you're going to make mistakes. But being self-aware, which I've mentioned in other episodes, being self-aware and being willing to sacrifice that selfish part of yourself that you really want to be there, because that's how human nature is. We always divert. But if you're willing to accept responsibility for your own actions and take accountability for the things that you did because you want to sacrifice yourself for the other person,
that's good.
That speaks volumes.
Yep.
About a person's honesty and integrity.
You're not kidding. There ain't enough of that.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Right? So I believe that in our choices, we do find ourselves sometimes making the wrong choices, either knowingly or unknowingly, like you said, and sometimes it's not the fault of our own. And, like you just said, Brian, those choices can sometimes at the moment look like mistakes. But sometimes it's all the only choice we have. So maybe it's not a mistake. Maybe the choice that you had to make especially if it involves another person, which it usually does, it's not a mistake. It's not really wrong. It's all you got. So that, to me, I'll say it this way, I don't think that that's really what defines that person. Because in the moment, that's the only choice they had. And if they really were honest about it, maybe that's not even the choice that they really wanted. But you know what? They were left with those cards. What are you going to do? It is what it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm saying is we have to be careful how we define people and how we look at people, because sometimes you look at them and you think, why would they do that? Well, maybe they didn't have a choice. And maybe that doesn't make them a bad person or whatever you would consider them to be. Maybe that they're just dealing with the cards they were dealt. And that's not the choice that they really wanted. Is that who they really are? Nope.
That's why it's important to observe instead of just coming to an instant judgment.
Yeah.
You know, you look for consistencies in behavior, consistency in actions, how they treat others.
Yeah.
You know, you can see the difference between somebody who doesn't want to change and somebody who knows they need to change.
Oh, that's good. Wow. That's really good. So stepping off of that, we talked about living up to other people's standards, our expectations. And I think that's kind of what I'm saying when I say that sometimes the cards that we're dealt with, we don't need to feel guilty about what we've done. Sometimes you just have to do what you have to do. And the way people look at you, just note that, okay, if they're judging you, that's fine. That's on them. But that doesn't have to define who you are. And you're not defined from that.
Yep.
You can get better and you can heal and you can move on no matter what that other person, if there was another person involved in that situation, decides to do. Because we don't have control over other people.
Exactly.
And that's why we shouldn't feel bad about those things, because sometimes, you know what? Life just happens.
Life isn't all sunshine and rainbows.
It is what it is. So you deal with it at the moment. But just note that, you know what? Those situations don't have to keep plaguing you, is what I'm saying, your whole life. You don't have to keep beating yourself up over what you think was a wrong choice or a bad choice. Whether you were put in that situation or whether you made that decision and you felt at the moment it was good, you know what?
It's like I say to some of my friends, your mistakes, your faults and your flaws, they do not define you unless you let them. Be better than that. And the only way you can be better than that is when you realize that you are better than that. It's like embracing the mistakes, because you're going to make mistakes. We talked about that in prior episodes. But those mistakes do not define you unless you let them.
That's good. And I think on that, Brian, that helps people knowing what you just said, like really knowing that, will help them to move on, to change, to heal, to give them hope, to know that I can take those mistakes, yes, recognize them for what they were, but I can move on. And it's okay no matter, what happens from here.
Yeah.
It can get better.
Because the definition of you as a person is so much more than the things from the past.
Exactly. That's what I'm getting at. Mm-hmm. We have to be careful who and what we think defines us, because we're all individuals and we're all unique and we're all important in the whole scheme of things.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to not let those things, to say it that way, I don't know, but just be careful not to let those things affect us in that way, because we are better than that. So,
excuse me.
Off of what you said a little bit earlier, Brian, I think the thing is we have to recognize is that our job is not to judge, but it's to lift up and to encourage. People already know that they make mistakes. They know the mistakes they've made. They live in that. You don't need to remind people of where they're at, whether they're dealing with something or they've already dealt with that or they're going through. It doesn't matter. That's not what they need to hear from you. They need to hear that you're going to encourage them, lift them up, and help them to be the person that they really can be.
Yeah.
And the person they want to be.
Yeah.
People don't get up. Oh, well, I don't think. Do you think that people get up in the morning and think, well, today I hope I make mistakes and I hope I screw this whole day up and I hope that I make everybody's life miserable, including my own? I don't think they do. I mean...
There's a difference between waking up in the morning and knowing that you're going to make a mistake or knowing that it's okay that you're going to make a mistake.
That's good.
Because I don't wake up in the morning ever thinking that today's going to be great. No, I know today's, there's a possibility it's probably not going to be a good day. But I keep moving forward and acknowledge the mistakes that are made and you learn from it.
So you hope for the best and prepare for the worst?
In probably a less gloomy kind of way, yeah. Like, you always wake up with the hope of a good day. But when you wake up with understanding that, today might not be a good day, it'll help prepare you. It's a realistic mindset.
I was going to say, isn't that reality?
It's a realistic mindset.
That's healthy.
Well, yeah, it doesn't put you in a false sense of security either.
Right.
It doesn't put you in a position where you're like, well, today's going to be a great day. And then when it's not,
when it hits the fan,
you get more upset about it.
Right. You can
disappointed.
Deal. Yeah, you can deal.
You can deal with it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I heard it said, I loved this saying. I don't know who said, I seen it. It says, your job is not to judge. Your job is not to figure out if someone deserves something. Your job is to lift the falling, restore the broken, and heal the hurting. Can you imagine if we all did that, Brian?
We'd live in a much better world, that's for sure.
You're not kidding, huh?
Yep. But it's like I said at the beginning of this episode, is that people are inherently selfish. They're only in it for themselves. They don't care about the person next to you. And I know that sounds gloomy, but that's reality. People are just inherently selfish. So my counter to that is to put myself in a position where I will not allow myself to be the status quo.
Wow.
And that comes down to anybody watching this, from if they come back and watch this, like when we get to episode 20 and people come back and, or people watching right now, people in the future, whatever the case may be. Don't be the status quo.
Yeah.
Don't be
better.
The definition that the world thinks you are.
Oh, that's good, Brian.
Be the person that you know you are.
Again, not living up to other people's expectations of who or what they think you are.
Or who they think you should be.
Okay, that's better. Yeah. Wow.
That's why I never lived up to anybody's expectations of myself. And I used to let it get to me. People from family from the past, people who wronged me, I always let that get to me. Until eventually I said, no more. If that's how you want to think of me, have fun with that. Because I guarantee you in 5 years' time, 10 years' time, 20 years' time, I'm going to look back and I guarantee you I'm going to be a lot happier than you are.
Choice.
And that started with me.
Yeah.
And it can start with you too.
Yep, absolutely. Yep. Because you don't, like you said, Brian, those of you listening, you don't have to be what others have said you are when you know you're not. You can be better than that. And you are. You are better than that. So don't let other people define you. That's not where your self-worth is. You are better than that. That's not where your potential lies, is off other people's reflection of you, their standard of you.
Yep.
Life happens. And sometimes you had to make those choices. But you can get better. You can move on. You can change. And you don't have to live up to their expectations if they're not good expectations.
Don't let them define you.
Exactly. That's it. That's it right there. So we're going to end it there. Do you have any other questions, comments, concerns?
No, I would have to say that the fact that we've been through this on our 10th episode, it's been an experience. And I know this episode has run a little bit longer than normal, but it being episode 10, I think it's called for. The amount of self-reflection that this podcast has brought to us, the amount of being able to share our lives this way, has been a humbling experience.
It is, because we throw ourselves out there.
And we appreciate all of you being here and enjoying what we have to say. I know we probably don't say everything that you agree with, and that's perfectly fine. Mm-hmm. But I want everyone to know from both of us that we want to make sure that you get the full picture of us, and even probably help you get a better 360-degree view of your own life.
Exactly.
And we're thankful for that.
Yep. Yep. And we hope that the podcast brings as much healing to you as it is to us. Because it is an ongoing experience. Yep. And it's helped.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I do want to say, and then I'll let you wrap it up. Mm-hmm. We want to make something big out of this. We don't want it to stay small forever. Mm-hmm. We want to grow. And a lot of people are doing a great job of sharing the podcast with people and getting it out there, but we want to improve. And eventually we want to bring this to a position of, like, we want to reach people in more ways than just from a camera. Mm-hmm. We want to talk to people. We want to have them on the show.
Yes.
We want to have interviews.
Yep.
We want this to be big.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I say that is because we don't want it to just be, we don't want it to be two-dimensional.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You know? We want to reach people.
Yep. Yeah, because it's not about us.
No, and that's the whole thing. This has helped us, mm-hmm. but this is not about us.
No. No.
We care about you guys more than we do ourselves.
Absolutely.
So we hope you continue to watch and get something out of this.
Yep.
And share with as many people as you can.
Yep.
Because the more people that we can reach out to, the more we could hopefully try and change the world.
There you go. You never know what can happen, do you?
I've seen people do far less with their outreach.
Yep, absolutely. So in tonight's episode, I'm going to leave you with this. Believe in yourself, be patient with yourself, and know that your best is always good enough. So
absolutely.
That'll do it for tonight.
All right. Have a good night, everyone.
Have a good night.